Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and welcome to the final part of What If Deku Was in 1B. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat, so we begin. Returning to consciousness in the hospital, the first thing the Greenette noticed was that his arm couldn't move. Oh, right, I lost it. He sighed as he tried to recall what had happened while using his other arm to sit up. Wait, hold on. Dazed and confused, the Viridian eyes tried to figure out what had happened. That was when he saw a familiar figure sleeping against the edge of the hospital bed. Tokage? Memories flooded in like a tidal wave, and the Greenette's eyes widened. That's right, I was about to die when I thought I heard her voice. You're awake. Yes? Turning to see who it was, Izuku calmed himself down when he saw 1A's homeroom teacher, Aizawa, by the door. I told Vlad the situation. He'll be... Harry! And Sir Night-Eye! The Greenette suddenly interrupted the tired-looking man. The images of the crying girl and fatally injured pro-hero flashed through his mind, and he couldn't silence his worry. And Mirio, too! Did what... He cut himself off as another memory returned. Overhaul's reveal made his stomach tighten in anxiety, and Eraser's grim face only made it worse. Mirio, he has permanently lost his quirk. The doctors have scanned him, and there seems to be not a single trace left. The exams pass him as an ordinary quirkless kid. The teacher faced him head-on, not wanting to hide anything, as it would only make matters worse in the long run. Eddie has a fever, but is going to be fine. She'll be supervised by me, since I can erase her quirk whenever need be, but... Silence hung in the air like smog, but it only got thicker as Mr. Aizawa had more news. As for Sir Night-Eye, Izuku remembered it loud and clear. While he was falling, he had seen the pitch-black abyss that embodied the concept of death. He vividly recalled the desperate feeling. Izuku remembered it loud and clear. While he was falling, he had seen the pitch-black abyss that embodied the concept of death. He vividly recalled the desperate feeling. The metaphorical being had almost taken him into its embrace, if it weren't for Eri turning back time itself. However, almost like a consolation prize, death had wrapped its cold tendrils around All Might's former sidekick. It was the same feeling he had when he first stumbled into the alleyway, but even more intense. Where is he? His voice shook. There was no denying that he was scared, but he tried to hide it. Aizawa wanted to keep quiet, but then a commotion could be heard. Izuku pulled his arm out from underneath Tokage's head and ripped out the IV needle before heading toward the door. Eraser didn't even bother to stop him, as it would have been a useless endeavor, so instead, he followed the Greenette. Opening the door and heading down a couple of hallways, Izuku saw two nurses trying to convince Mirio to turn back, as the third year was banging on a door. Mirio-senpai! Sky-blue ovals faced the Greenette's way, as Mirio stopped resisting against the nurses. Midoriya, it's Sir. I just heard the nurses say he won't make it past today. Oh. No. Izuku didn't know what the feeling was. The emotion was a mix between anger, sadness, pain, and sorrow, all mixed into a complicated pit within his stomach as the Greenette suddenly charged forward and kicked open the door. Sir! Tears were already pouring down Mirio's face as he rushed into the room. His mentor was lying already on his deathbed, as the man could barely speak. Mirio. Tears welled up in Izuku's eyes, too, as he watched Mirio lean down for Night-Eye to gently hold his face. Toshinori silently entered the room, too, as he grimly watched his former sidekick. The uptight man hadn't even registered his presence, and instead focused his attention on his student. Smile. The tired hand fondly tapped against the damp skin, before falling down to the bedside. A society without cheer and humor will not have a bright future. The shining eyes of a hopeful, dying man then faced the window and looked out into the vast blue sky. The endless space and infinite possibilities made him rethink his opinion a little of Izuku. He had indeed seen the greenette die in his foresight, yet here he was. Albeit the child next to his sidekick was silently crying, the boy was alive. Eddie was still unconscious, and her lack of control was too risky to be used, but he didn't mind. The uptight pro-hero was going to stick with his beliefs until the very end. Eddie-o. Activating his quirk one last time, the foreseeing eyes narrowed into a calming smile as he softly spoke out. I see a bright future. You will be. The shining eyes dulled as the sound of the heart rate monitor beeped obnoxiously loud. Each seemed to echo not only around the room, but through the children too, as they could feel their own heart rates increase. It was time for Night Eye's last words, and Mirio listened attentively. You will be a fine hero. Absolute silence. The heart rate monitor went flat as Sir Night Eye died, face bearing the smile he always made sure to have. An eerie stillness engulfed the room before breaking as the third year fell to the floor, screaming for his mentor. The waves of emotion erupting from his senior made Izuku's knees feel weak. He wasn't even sure how to stand. He wasn't sure of anything. The scene before him still hadn't sunk in, but as it did, the facts made Izuku want to hurl. Mirio was permanently quirkless. Sir Night Eye was dead. But he was unscathed. The freak coincidence that Eri's quirk was the ability to turn back time had left him as healthy as when the fight began, but it only served to make the freckled boy feel more guilty. It was as if he had been blessed, but only to the misfortune of others, and that only dropped another knot into the tangle in his stomach. Unable to keep watching, he ran. The feeling was completely different to when he saw Ida, as the Azurette was someone he barely even knew, just someone from the other class. That fact had guiltily kept him somewhat still within his comfort zone, which was why he was able to move on so easily. Stop. Night Eye, on the other hand, well, that was not. Izuku's ears rang with phantom sounds echoing loudly down his eardrums. His heartbeat reminded him of the monitor in Sir's room, and no matter how far he ran down the hospital halls, he couldn't escape. I can't. It was as if the abyss that swallowed Night Eye's life was threatening to take his mind, too, and the thought petrified the greenette. Fear gripped his lungs and made it hard to breathe. He stumbled past someone before crashing into his room. I'm scared. It had been too much. Nothing felt secure. Everything was collapsing and nowhere was safe. The sick feeling caused more tears to prick at the edge of his large viridian eyes as everything misfortunate spun through. The USJ, the Stain incident, and Ida's death. The unlucky incidents hadn't stopped there for the internships, as there were also Nomu, fires, and mass panic. Then to deal with a funeral, the media, and all the aftermath of that. It really had been piling on. Then, like icing on the cake, the shopping trip run-in, the kidnapping, and All Might's retirement. The greenette mentally apologized to his mother. The woman had done everything she could to prevent this, yet here he was, having a breakdown. The fact he couldn't compose himself only hurt more, because he knew Inko didn't deserve the stress he put her through. Unable even to look at himself anymore, Izuku gently pulled his knees to his chest. It wasn't all bad, right? He tried to think of the positive. Eddie's been saved, so that must have counted, right? He genuinely felt relieved to have saved the young child, because now she wouldn't have to suffer anymore. But in the end, he was saved by her. I couldn't save anyone. Hey. When Tokage woke up, the first thing she noticed was that Izuku was not where she last saw him. Did he find out already? Getting up, she heard screaming bounce from the walls down the hall and immediately figured out the situation. She wanted to help, but before anything could be done, a figure ran past her and slammed the door shut. Deku. She knew the feeling. The feeling of being swallowed within your own mind and the wish to be alone. The thing made you want to push everyone out, so you could at least suffer alone, but after Hosu, she knew better. It was not how she felt deep down, because in that moment, she could never be more grateful for when Izuku came to her. She was never the type of person for physical contact, yet back then, it was exactly what she needed. The warm reassurance from another person. So there's no point complaining. Slipping into the room, her heart was already breaking when she saw Izuku's usually bright emeralds almost dull and lifeless. He hadn't even registered her presence, but that was okay. You were my hero then, so it's my turn now. She sat next to his curled-up figure and rested her head on the quivering shoulder. He was silent, so she tried to gently call out his name. Deku. Her pale hand landed on the boy's back, and the jade eyes blinked before turning to meet the worried, dusky, moss-colored orbs. Tokage couldn't smile. Not yet, at least. She just wanted to be honest, like how Izuku was with her and Hosu. Honest with the pain, and honest with her thoughts. A massive wave of déjà vu flickered across her mind, and she finally spoke, a cheeky grin on her cheeks. Yo, you're the dude that punched the zero-pointer. The dull orbs flickered a little as he recognized who was talking. Tokage was next to him, and she was imitating Awase from when they first met. Yeah, that was me. His voice shook from hiccuping through the tears, and he locked eyes with the grinning dusk ones. A strong quirk and a smart brain. Quite the powerful combination, but we need a rematch where we fight strategies. The tense face relaxed as he recognized the Monoma impression and nodded. Didn't we end up with the same strategies in the end, though? Sports Festival was a lot of fun. He had faced all sorts of different opponents and overcame most of them. His match against Bakugo could have ended differently because they had an equal output of power. But he had lost because the blonde was airborne. Izuku had hit upwards, while the other diagonally down, so, although the collision threw them both back an equidistance away, Bakugo was thrown upward, and he could land in the ring while the greenette was blown outside. I totally could have won that one, though. Tokage chuckled softly and nodded. You did challenge him right on the winning platform. The two continued to chatter about the small but fun happenings that had occurred. There seemed to be a lot that they shared together, which came out in silly gossip, but when they reached the present time, Izuku's smile had returned. The two sat together on the floor with Tokage resting her head on the other's shoulder as the dinosaur lover blabbered about meaningless random thoughts. I should ask Shiozaki to worship the dino nuggies. You really shouldn't. Monoma would tell you off for real. The girl laughed loudly, letting her sharp, toothy grin shine metaphorically through the darkness. He would, wouldn't he? I should totally try anyway. Izuku chuckled, and Tokage went silent. The sudden change in demeanor caused the freckled boy to turn toward her. Tokage! Tokage had suddenly hugged him tightly, and out of reflex, the freckled boy hugged back. The two greenettes clung to each other, just like how they did in Hosu when Viridian Eyes noticed that she had also gripped his scarred hand. You're safe now. It was sudden and out of the blue, but the words hit hard. It made tears prick back up, but this time, the boy didn't shrink in on himself. He literally couldn't. Tokage was holding him tight as he buried his freckled cheeks into her reassuring shoulder, and with a whimper, he started to cry. The tears represented the pain he had, and everything just came pouring out. He felt one of her small hands reassuringly grip his tightly, while the other gently patted his back soothingly. It imitated what he did for her before, and the tears only fell faster. It was messy and horrible, as the green curls stuck to his face in an ugly mess, but as Tokage said, he was safe. It didn't matter if he was at his worst, because the girl he clung on to didn't mind. She seemed to be there for him no matter what. Who knows how many minutes passed when the tears finally stopped and the boy slowly shifted. He pulled himself back, and a small chuckle escaped Tokage. She pulled a sleeve over her hand and gently wiped her tears away so he could see her toothy grin. The familiar sight filled Izuku's empty body with warmth and relief. I said it before, and I'll say it again. We can restart from the beginning as many times as we have to, okay? Because as heroes, we learn from the pain. She was hinting for Izuku to keep it going, and he let out an awkward smile. It seemed a little embarrassing, and he secretly wondered how Tokage had said it back before with a straight face. Either way, it was like their own secret way to cheer each other up, as he whispered back, "We have to make do with what we have." He buried his face into her shoulder again to hide his face, and Tokage gently chuckled. Once more, nothing had physically changed, but Izuku felt stronger than he ever did. He had broken his promise, but that didn't mean he should stop. It just meant he had to try even harder next time. Tokage got up and stretched a hand out. He grabbed on, and although his sluggish body seemed to make his buckle, the grip on Tokage's hand never let go. She smiled her signature toothy grin, and the boy softly exhaled. Almost as if he was being reborn, he stood up and walked away from the corner he sat in. "Let's go." Regret and failure are a part of life. But what's important is what you do afterwards. Build connections with people, no matter who they are. Because in the toughest of times, when you can't do it alone, they are the ones to pull you out. Izuku fondly gazed at the girl who held his hand, grateful that their paths had crossed and continued to intertwine. Life had brought them together, as he happily smiled. He still had a lot to do, but he wasn't alone. Monoma and the class were waiting just like the supportive teachers in Inko. It might be filled with chaotic troubles and problems, but they were all family to him. His next job was to bring Eri into his ever-growing family of 1B and more, but he was ready for that. He saw that now. Gripping Tokage's hand so they walked side by side, they got ready to head back to the place where they belonged. Yeah. Let's go home. Thank you all for sticking around to the end of this series, and I hope that you enjoyed the journey. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, we'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of this What If series. Their details will be in the description below. That's the end of today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.